Welcome back to the Caregiver Minute, where every weekday family and professional caregivers gather to refine their skills, gain inspiration, and prepare to serve. One common challenge in today's overly contentious world is a longing for black and white answers to what seem like very simple questions. And yet, there's so much arguing over certain things. Take diet, for example. What things are good and what things are bad to put into the body? People ask me all the time, Eric, is coconut oil good for Alzheimer's disease? I've read that coconut oil can be really helpful for people with Alzheimer's. Should they take coconut oil? And that sounds like a black and white kind of question, but it's really not. And the key to understanding the nuances here is to consider the context. So many things can only be understood when put in their proper context. So if someone asks me, is coconut oil a good thing to use in the context of a ketogenic diet? If the goal is to get people burning fat for fuel and into a state of ketosis because they don't respond very well to insulin signaling, they have Alzheimer's disease, which is nicknamed diabetes of the brain. And so we want to use a ketogenic diet as a medical intervention to trick the body into thinking that it's fasting and to give them fat for fuel so that they can produce ketones in the liver, since that's more efficient than glucose, and it might be a fuel source that they can use. Well, in that context, yeah, coconut oil is probably very helpful. It's one of the things that could be added in. But as soon as you start adding in a whole bunch of carbohydrate, now you've got higher fat and cholesterol in the context of high carbohydrates, and sugar damages cholesterol. It's likely that you could do harm if you're mixing and matching dietary interventions. We run into this issue of context in a lot of what's called dietary research, because so much of that research is based on epidemiological studies. People fill out things like food frequency questionnaires, which I think are a little bit silly to begin with because I don't remember what I ate 2 weeks ago today. And some of those questionnaires ask people to consider how many times in the last year they've eaten a certain thing. But those questionnaires ignore the issue of context. So you'll see people that report eating quite a bit of meat, and you'll see some studies that come out and say, eating meat correlates with higher cardiovascular risk. But those studies don't consider the context. If you're eating meat in the context of a high carbohydrate diet, then yeah, that probably causes a real problem because you're increasing cholesterol and then you're damaging that cholesterol and you're creating a lot of chronic inflammation. One researcher, Dr. Benjamin Bickman, a doctor of physiology who runs a food science lab, reported that his research showed when you pair carbohydrate and protein, you get a 7-fold increase in insulin signaling. Now, theoretically, that would be because when you combine protein and carbohydrate, you have the conditions necessary to build muscle. But if you're not working out and you're not creating a situation where you need to build muscle, well, your body might just convert everything into fat, stored around the midsection, and you might wind up with a bunch of damaged cholesterol and a lot of chronic inflammation, which is just a disaster waiting to happen. The bottom line here is that context matters, and whether we're talking about food or we're talking about approaches for people that we're serving or interactions with others or a whole lot of other things in life, consider the context. If you want to make sense of what seems like black and white on the surface, but you're not finding easy answers, consider the context. And often, more things will start to make sense. I hope that's helpful to you and the people you serve, and I look forward to seeing you again soon for another episode of the Caregiver Minute.